Hey friends, happy Friday and welcome to Going Deeper. We are in week 3 of our series, The Way Back. And last Sunday, Reed talked about a little known story in the Bible about Mephibosheth. If you want to go back, you can read that story in 2 Samuel chapter 9, or you can rewatch the message here on Facebook or YouTube. But he talked about this feeling of aloneness that we have, times when we feel disappointed by people or forgotten by God. And he talked about how Mephibosheth, had to practice that name, lived in a place called Lo Debar, which literally meant no pasture. Meant it was a place that you did not want to be. And it was a place that he probably never imagined that he would find himself. So he could have assumed, I live in a place called no pasture. If there's no pasture, there must be no shepherd. And which may be a fair assumption when you are feeling distant from God, but it is not a true assumption. And this is where we're going to dive deeper today. That no matter where you find yourself, you have a shepherd. And those questions we ask, like, does God even know where I am? Does he care? To answer those questions, we are going to look at John chapter 10, where Jesus compares himself to a shepherd. And not just any shepherd, but the good shepherd. In John chapter 10, verse 11, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And this is the picture that Jesus wants to give us of himself, of his character. And it's, no accident that Jesus compares himself to the shepherd and us to the sheep. I learned that sheep during that time were actually required the most care, more than any other livestock, that they needed endless attention and meticulous care and constant watching so that they didn't get themselves into trouble. So, picture a flock of toddlers. So Jesus, in giving us this picture of himself as the shepherd, he wants us to know how closely he is looking out for us, his flock. And in this passage, in the very next verse, verse 12, it's very clear to us who he is not. It says, the hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. And that makes complete sense. The shepherd is the one who owns the sheep. He has paid for them. He's invested in them. And it makes him a different kind of caregiver. He is not going to leave when danger comes. He's going to stay and fight, even if that means risking his life to save the sheep. In the next verse, verse 14, he says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. It says he knows his sheep. And we think of sheep, at least I do, think of sheep as just a bunch of white little fluffy things, all in a big group. But a shepherd would know that they are individuals and they have their own personalities and characteristics, which is why I love that Jesus compares us to sheep. I mean, a shepherd would know which ones are the ornery ones, and they would know which ones are restless or anxious. He would know which ones are quarrelsome. And just like Jesus, he knows us inside and out. He knows where we are. And here's the thing. It says that Jesus came to lay down his life for his sheep. And that is true, that Jesus came to save us. He came to save our lives. But he also came to save our days, to change our days, our moments, our day-to-day activities. He came to make a difference in the way that we live out each day. And there's nothing more daily than a shepherd's work with his sheep. I mean, if you are a farmer or you work or live on a farm, you know that the work is never done. You just can't really go on vacation because your animals are dependent on you. And a shepherd would understand this, And by calling himself the Good Shepherd, Jesus wanted us to know how daily and how constant his care is for us. I read a book by a man who was actually a shepherd, and he writes with this unique perspective of what it means to actually take care of his sheep. And so I just want to read a little excerpt from this book. It's called A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23, and it's written by Philip Keller. And as I read, I want you to make this connection between the shepherd and our good shepherd. And I want you to picture how deeply our shepherd cares for you. Here's what he says. He says, during my own years as a keeper of sheep, perhaps some of the most poignant memories are wrapped around the commingled anxiety of keeping account of my flock and repeatedly saving and restoring cast sheep. He explains that a cast sheep is a term they used for a sheep that had somehow rolled over on its back and was not able to get up on its own, which was actually a life-threatening situation for the sheep and very dangerous. It is not easy to convey on paper the sense of this ever-present danger. Often I would go out early and merely cast my eye across the sky. If I saw the black-winged buzzards circling overhead in their long, slow spirals, anxiety would grip me. Leaving everything else, I would immediately go out into the rough wild pastures and count the flock to make sure everyone was well and fit and able to be on its feet. Again and again, I would spend hours searching for a single sheep that was missing. Does that remind you of the 99 that Jesus left to find the one? Then, more often than not, I would see it at a distance, down on its back, lying helpless. At once, I would start to run toward it, hurrying as fast as I could, for every minute was critical. Within me, there was a mingled sense of fear and joy. Fear it might be too late, joy that it was found at all. And as soon as I reached the cast ewe, my very first impulse was to pick it up. Tenderly, I would roll the sheep over on its side. This would relieve the pressure of gases in the rumen. If she had been down for long, I would have to lift her onto her feet. And then, straddling the sheep with my legs, I would hold her up, rubbing her limbs to restore the circulation to her legs. This often took quite a little time. When the sheep started to walk again, she would often just stumble, stagger, and collapse in a heap once more. All the time I worked on the cast sheep, I would talk to it gently. When are you going to learn to stand on your own feet? I'm so glad I found you in time, you little rascal. And so the conversation would go, always couched in language combined with tenderness and rebuke, compassion and correction. And little by little, the sheep would regain its equilibrium. It would start to walk steadily and surely, and by it would dash away to rejoin the others, set free from its fears and frustrations, given another chance to live a little longer. And I just love this picture of the heart of God. I think so many times we believe the lie that when we fall down, God is mad at us. He's just fed up and disgusted. But that's not the heart of God, as we can see here from the shepherd. He has the same care and concern and compassion for us, his cast sheep. And the fact is, yes, we do find ourselves cast down for a number of reasons. But we can be sure that our shepherd, Jesus, goes with us. He goes before us. He walks beside us. He comes behind us. And that his constant care is on us. When I was a little girl, my mom sang this song to me about being Jesus's little lamb. And it's now a song that I sing to my children. And I'm not going to sing it to you, but the words of the song, I'll just close with this. And it's from the perspective of a sheep. And it says this: I am Jesus's little lamb, ever glad at heart I am. For my shepherd gently guides me. He knows my needs and well provides me. He loves me every day the same, even calls me by my name. When I'm home or far away, Jesus is my help and stay. When I hunger, Jesus feeds me. Into pleasant pastures leads me. When I thirst, he bids me go where the quiet waters flow. So my prayer for me and for you today is that we would remember that we are Jesus's little lambs, and we are in his constant care. I pray that you would go with that truth and with that knowledge today. And we'll Thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you next time.